The Grand Convocation Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest room ever built by any species. It floated at the center of Station Meridian, a massive space station that served as the political heart of known space. Delegates from 47 species sat in their assigned sections. Some breathed oxygen, some breathed methane, some did not breathe at all, but all of them had come to this place for the same reason. The galaxy needed to be governed, and this was where decisions were made. Ambassador Helena Vance stood at the central podium. She was 63 years old, with gray hair pulled back in a simple style. Her uniform was plain blue, with no decorations except for the small Earth emblem on her shoulder. She had served the human diplomatic corps for 40 years. She had prevented 11 wars. She had written the Treaty of Kendros Prime, which had ended the bloodiest conflict in 3 centuries. She had dedicated her entire life to peace. Today she was going to end all of it. The hall fell silent as she activated her microphone. Thousands of alien eyes turned toward her. Some species showed their emotions clearly. The Rithini, tall and covered in silver scales, looked bored. The Kethrani, small and furry with 6 arms, looked curious. The Mandari, who resembled floating clouds of purple gas, pulsed with faint light that meant they were paying attention. Helena looked at all of them. She had friends among these species. She had colleagues. She had spent decades learning their languages, their customs, their histories. She had loved this work. She had believed in it with her whole heart. Then the Council had passed Directive 1187. The memory still burned in her chest. It had happened 30 cycles ago, during a routine administrative session. The Rithini Dominion had proposed a reorganization of Council voting rights. They had argued that species should be ranked by the age of their civilizations. Older species had more experience. They deserved more power. The proposal had passed with 70% support. Under the new system, humanity was reclassified as a developing civilization. Their homeworld was only 10,000 years old, a baby by galactic standards. It did not matter that humans had served as neutral arbiters for 3 centuries. It did not matter that humanity had no empire, no military conquests, no territorial ambitions. The Council had looked at a number on a chart and decided that humans were children who needed supervision. Helena had protested. She had appealed. She had called in every favor she had earned over 40 years of service. Nothing worked. The elder species smiled and patted her on the head and told her that this was for the best. Humanity would still be valued. They would still be consulted. They would just have less power. Less power meant less ability to arbitrate. Less ability to arbitrate meant less ability to prevent wars. The Council had just crippled the only neutral force in the galaxy, and they had done it with a smile. Helena took a deep breath. She had spent 30 cycles preparing for this moment. The human diplomatic corps had met in emergency session. The decision had been unanimous. If the galaxy did not want human help, then humans would stop helping. She pressed a button on her podium. A holographic display appeared behind her. It showed a simple list. 312 years ago, Helena began. Humanity made first contact with the Tessari Confederation. We were young. We were inexperienced. We had just discovered faster-than-light travel. The galaxy looked at us and saw primitives. She paused to let the words sink in. The Tessari saw something else. They saw a species with no territorial ambitions, a species with no ancient grudges, a species that could speak to anyone without the weight of history dragging them down. They asked us to help mediate a trade dispute with the Orvani coalition. We agreed. The list behind her began to scroll. Names appeared, dates, locations. That was our first negotiation. It was not our last. In 300 years, humanity has brokered 1,742 treaties. We have prevented 489 wars. We have organized relief efforts that saved an estimated 30 billion lives. Across 17 species, the numbers kept scrolling. Some delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. We have done this work without payment. We have done it without recognition. We have done it because we believed in the idea of a united galaxy. We believed that peace was worth any sacrifice. Helena's voice hardened. 30 cycles ago, this council passed Directive 1187. You reclassify humanity as a developing civilization. You stripped us of our permanent arbitration rights. You reduced our voting power to the minimum level. When we asked why, you told us it was a matter of administrative efficiency. She looked directly at Elder Torvax of the Rithini Dominion. He had proposed the directive. He had rallied the votes. He sat in his elevated seat with an expression of mild boredom, as if this speech was wasting his valuable time. We asked for respect, Helena said. You offered paperwork. She pressed another button. The holographic display changed. It now showed a simple message in every major galactic language. Notice of dissolution. Human diplomatic corps effective immediately. Murmurs rippled through the hall. The Kethrani delegation began chattering among themselves. The Mendari pulsed with agitated light. Effective immediately, Helena continued. The human diplomatic corps is dissolved. All human embassies throughout the galaxy will close within 30 cycles. All ongoing negotiations will be terminated. All treaties that require human arbitration will need to find new arbiters. She paused. You wanted to govern yourselves. Now you will. Elder Torvax laughed. It was a deep, rumbling sound that echoed through the hall. Ambassador Vance, please. This dramatic gesture is unnecessary. The galaxy functioned before humans arrived. It will function after you leave. Your species has an inflated sense of its own importance. Helena looked at him calmly. Perhaps. I hope you are right, Elder Torvax. I truly do. She stepped away from the podium. Her aides fell in behind her. They walked toward the exit with measured steps. No one tried to stop them. As Helena reached the door, she heard a voice rise behind her. It was sharp and angry. She recognized it immediately. Ambassador Keth of the Kethrani Federation. This is unacceptable. The Sorvali delegation has violated the terms of the Kandros Accord. We demand immediate arbitration. Another voice answered. This one was deep and cold. Ambassador Sorvin of the Sorvali Empire. The Kandros Accord was arbitrated by humans. Without human oversight, it is void. We recognize no obligations under its terms. You cannot do this. The treaty was signed. It is legally binding. Binding to whom? The humans are leaving. Who will enforce it? The shouting grew louder. Other voices joined in. Helena heard species accusing each other of old crimes. She heard ancient grudges being dragged out of storage. She heard the first cracks appearing in 3 centuries of careful peace. She did not look back. The corridors of Station Meridian were quiet compared to the chaos in the hall. Helena walked in silence, her aides matching her pace. None of them spoke. There was nothing to say. They reached the human embassy section after 20 minutes of walking. The doors were already being sealed. Staff members carried boxes of personal belongings. Holographic displays were being taken down. 300 years of diplomatic history was being packed into crates. Helena's personal aide, a young man named David Chen, finally broke the silence. Do you think we did the right thing? Helena stopped walking. She looked at the walls of the embassy, at the photographs and awards that covered them. She saw her younger self shaking hands with the Tessari president. She saw the signing of the Mendari peace accords. She saw 3 centuries of hope and effort and sacrifice. I do not know, she admitted, but I know we could not continue. We gave everything to this galaxy. We asked for nothing in return except to be treated as equals. They could not even give us that. David nodded slowly. What happens now? Helena resumed walking toward her office. Now we go home. We seal our borders. We focus on our own people for the first time in 300 years. And the galaxy? Helena reached her office door. She pressed her palm to the scanner and waited for it to open. Inside, her desk was already cleared. Her bags were already packed. The galaxy will have to learn to take care of itself, she said. We cannot force them to value us. We can only show them what our absence means. Behind her, somewhere in the depths of Station Meridian, the shouting continued. The Kethrani and Sorvali were just the beginning. Dozens of species had relied on human arbitration. Dozens of old conflicts had been held in check by human presence. Now that presence was gone. Helena did not know what would happen next, but she knew it would not be peaceful. She stepped into her office and began the long journey home. 6 months had passed since humanity closed its embassies. 6 months since Ambassador Helena Vance walked out of the Grand Convocation Hall. 6 months since the galaxy learned what it meant to govern itself. The lesson had been painful. Counselor Yeveth of the Tessari Confederation sat in her small office on Station Meridian and stared at the reports on her display. Each one brought worse news than the last. The Kethrani-Sorvali border dispute had escalated into open conflict. 3 colonies had been destroyed. 50,000 civilians were dead. And that was just one of 17 active crises. Yeveth was young for a Tessari diplomat, only 80 years old. Her scales were a bright green that showed her youth and inexperience. But she had trained under the best teacher in the galaxy. Ambassador Helena Vance had personally mentored her for 10 years. Yeveth had learned everything she knew about negotiation from a human. Now the humans were gone, and Yeveth was drowning. She closed her eyes and tried to remember Helena's lessons. Stay calm, listen more than you speak. Find the shared interest beneath the conflict. Simple rules that had seemed easy when Helena was there to guide her. Nothing seemed easy anymore. A chime announced a visitor at her door. Yeveth straightened her robes and composed her expression. Enter. The door slid open to reveal Elder Cassix of the Muthrani Collective. He was ancient even by Muthrani standards, his crystalline body clouded with age. He moved slowly, his light pulsing in muted shades of gray. Yeveth had never seen him look so tired. "Counselor Yeveth," he said. His voice was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Thank you for seeing me." Yeveth gestured to a chair designed for his species. "Elder Cassix, I am surprised you came in person. The Muthrani usually prefer remote communication." Cassix settled into the chair with a sound like grinding glass. "These are unusual times. I have come to discuss the situation with the Vorix Collective." Yeveth felt her stomach tighten. The Vorix, another crisis she had been trying to manage. "What has happened?" "They have closed the Nexus trade corridor. All Muthrani vessels are being turned away. They claim we violated the terms of the Stellar Commerce Agreement. Did you?" Cassix's light flickered with what might have been embarrassment. "The agreement was open to interpretation. We believed our actions were within acceptable limits. The Vorix disagree." Yeveth pulled up the relevant treaty on her display. The Stellar Commerce Agreement had been negotiated by humans 40 years ago. It was a masterpiece of diplomatic language, carefully crafted to balance the interests of 7 different species. Yeveth had studied it during her training. She had admired its elegance. Now she saw its flaw. "The dispute resolution clause," she said slowly. "It requires human arbitration." "Yes." Cassix's light dimmed further. "Without humans, there is no mechanism for resolving disagreements. Both sides believe they are correct. Neither side will yield. Have you tried negotiating directly with the Vorix?" "We have tried. They refuse to meet with us. Ambassador Threll has declared that the Muthrani are acting in bad faith. He says further communication is pointless." Yeveth rubbed her temples. This was the same pattern she had seen a dozen times in the past 6 months. Species that had relied on human arbitration for generations had forgotten how to talk to each other. They had forgotten how to compromise. They had forgotten that peace required effort. "I will speak with Ambassador Threll," she said. "Perhaps I can convince him to attend a mediation session." Cassix's light brightened slightly with hope. "You would do this?" "The Tessari have no stake in our dispute. The Tessari have a stake in galactic stability. If the Nexus trade corridor remains closed, it will affect commerce across 15 systems. The economic damage will spread far beyond your 2 species." Cassix rose from his chair with difficulty. "Thank you, Counselor. The Muthrani will not forget this kindness." After he left, Yeveth sat in silence for a long moment. Then she opened a communication channel to the Vorix delegation. Ambassador Threll appeared on her display. He was a Vorix, which meant he looked like a walking mountain of brown fur with forearms and a face full of tusks. His species was known for their stubborn nature and their long memories. They never forgot a grudge. "Counselor Yeveth," Threll said. His voice was a deep rumble. "I assume you are calling about the Muthrani situation." "I am. Elder Cassix has informed me of the trade corridor closure. He is requesting mediation." Threll snorted. "Mediation? With what arbiter?" "The humans are gone. The Council has no neutral parties left. I am offering my services. The Tessari have no involvement in your dispute. I can provide an objective perspective." Threll's eyes narrowed. You were trained by humans, were you not? Ambassador Vance was your mentor. She was. I learned a great deal from her. Then you are not neutral. You carry human thinking in your head. You'll favor their methods, their solutions. Yeveth felt frustration building in her chest. She pushed it down. Stay calm, Helena had always said. Anger never convinced anyone of anything. Ambassador Threll, the Mothrani are not your enemy. You have traded with them peacefully for 2 centuries. This dispute is about shipping routes and tariff calculations. It should not lead to a permanent breakdown in relations. It is not about shipping routes. Threll growled. It is about respect. The Mothrani think they can cheat us because we are younger than them. They think their ancient civilization gives them the right to interpret treaties however they please. We will not tolerate this arrogance, and closing the trade corridor will teach them respect. It will teach them consequences. Yeveth took a deep breath. The consequences will fall on both your peoples. The corridor carries goods that your colonies need. Your own citizens will suffer. Then they will understand that some principles are worth suffering for. The communication ended. Threll's image vanished, replaced by the seal of the Vorix Collective. Yeveth stared at the empty display. She had failed. Again. She thought about Helena Vance. The human ambassador would have found a way. She would have spoken to Threll in a way that reached past his anger. She would have found the words that unlocked his stubbornness. That was the human gift. They could talk to anyone. But Helena was gone. All the humans were gone. Yeveth made a decision. She opened a new communication channel, this one directed at Earth. The human homeworld had closed its borders 6 months ago. No alien vessels were allowed within 10 light years. All diplomatic channels had been shut down. Every species in the galaxy had tried to contact them. Every message had gone unanswered. Yeveth sent her message anyway. Ambassador Vance, this is Counselor Yeveth of the Tassari Confederation. I do not know if you will receive this. I do not know if you will respond. But I need to tell you what is happening. She paused to gather her thoughts. The galaxy is falling apart. The Kethrani and Sorvali are at war. The Vorix and Mothrani have cut off trade. The Draceni Republic is threatening to leave the Council entirely. Every day brings new crises, and we have no one to help us solve them. Her voice cracked slightly. She steadied herself. I have tried to use what you taught me. I have tried to listen. I have tried to find common ground. But I am not you. I do not have your experience, or your wisdom, or your patience. I am failing, Ambassador. I am failing everyone. She took a shaky breath. I am not asking you to come back. I understand why you left. The Council treated humanity shamefully. You deserved better than we gave you. But please, if there is any advice you can offer, any guidance you can provide, I would be grateful. The galaxy needs help. We need help. She ended the message and sent it into the void. Then she waited. Days passed. The Vorix Mothrani situation worsened. The Draceni made good on their threat and withdrew from the Council. The Kreth Syndicate, sensing weakness, began making territorial claims against their neighbors. The galaxy continued its slide toward chaos. No response came from Earth. On the 7th day, Yeveth received a different message. It was not from Helena Vance. It was from the Council President, Elder Torvax of the Rithini Dominion. Counselor Yeveth, your presence is required in the Grand Convocation Hall. The Council is convening an emergency session to address the current crisis. Yeveth felt a spark of hope. Perhaps the elder species had finally recognized the severity of the situation. Perhaps they were ready to take action. She hurried to the hall, her green scales bright with nervous energy. The scene that greeted her crushed that hope immediately. The Grand Convocation Hall was half empty. Delegations that had once filled every seat were gone. The Draceni section was dark. The Kethrani and Sorvali had withdrawn to opposite corners, surrounded by armed guards. The remaining species sat in tense clusters, eyeing each other with suspicion. Elder Torvax stood at the central podium. His silver scales gleamed under the lights. His expression was calm, almost bored. The Council will come to order, he announced. We are here to discuss the recent disturbances and determine appropriate responses. A Kethrani delegate stood up. There is nothing to discuss. The Sorvali attacked our colonies. We demand justice. A Sorvali delegate rose to answer. Your colonies were built on disputed territory. We simply reclaimed what was ours." The shouting began immediately. Yeveth watched in horror as two species that had coexisted peacefully for a century screamed accusations at each other. Other delegates joined in, taking sides, adding their own grievances to Theon year had passed since humanity closed its borders. The galaxy that had once prided itself on unity was now a patchwork of conflicts and broken alliances. Counselor Yeveth stood at the window of her quarters and watched the stars. Station Meridian still floated in the void, but it no longer felt like the center of anything. Half its docking bays were empty. The great markets that had once buzzed with traders from 100 worlds were quiet. The council still met, but fewer species attended each session. She had spent the past year building her coalition. It was small but dedicated. Representatives from 12 species who believed that peace was still possible. They met in secret, away from the eyes of Elder Torvax and his allies. They planned and debated and tried to find solutions. So far, they had accomplished nothing. The door chime interrupted her thoughts. She turned away from the window. "Enter." The door slid open to reveal an unexpected visitor. Elder Cassix of the Muthrani Collective floated into the room, his crystalline form pulsing with agitated light. Behind him came Ambassador Thrall of the Vorix Collective. The two species had been locked in a trade war for months. Yeveth had never seen them in the same room. "Elder Cassix, Ambassador Thrall," she kept her voice calm despite her surprise. "This is unexpected." Cassix spoke first. His voice trembled like cracking ice. "Counselor Yeveth, we have made a terrible discovery. We came to you because you are the only one we trust." Thrall nodded, his tusks gleaming in the dim light. "The counselor has proven herself fair. She tried to help us when no one else would." Yeveth gestured to the seating area. "Please sit. Tell me what you have found." The two former enemies settled into chairs across from each other. The sight was strange. 6 months ago, they had refused to be in the same star system. Now they sat like old friends with a shared burden. Cassix began the explanation. 3 weeks ago, our intelligence services intercepted a coded transmission. It was sent from Station Meridian to the Rithini homeworld. The encryption was old, but we managed to break it. He projected a holographic display from his crystalline form. Text appeared in the air, translated into standard galactic language. Yeveth read the words. Then she read them again. Her green scales turned pale. "This cannot be correct," she whispered. "We verified it," Thrall said. His voice was heavy with anger. "We have sources in the Rithini government. The transmission is authentic." The message was simple. It was a report from Elder Torvax to the Rithini High Council. It described the success of Directive 1187 and outlined the next steps in a plan that had been decades in the making. The plan was called Project Dominion. According to the message, the elder species had grown tired of human influence. For 3 centuries, humanity had served as neutral arbiters. This meant that no single species could dominate the council. Every dispute was resolved fairly. Every treaty balanced the interests of all parties. The elder species did not want fairness. They wanted power. Directive 1187 had not been about administrative efficiency. It had been designed to insult humanity. The elder species knew human pride. They knew that reclassifying humanity as a developing civilization would provoke a response. They had expected protests and angry speeches and eventually resignation. They had gotten exactly what they wanted. With humanity gone, the elder species were free to expand their influence. The chaos that followed was not a failure of governance. It was the desired outcome. While younger species fought among themselves, the Rithini and their allies quietly absorbed territory and resources. They positioned themselves as the only powers capable of restoring order. When the time was right, they would offer to mediate the conflicts they had deliberately allowed to fester. The price would be permanent leadership of the council. The younger species, exhausted by war, would have no choice but to accept. Yeveth felt sick. She had spent a year trying to hold the galaxy together. She had blamed herself for every failure. And all along, the failures had been engineered. "Why bring this to me?" she asked. "Why not expose it to the full council?" Cassix's light flickered grimly. "We considered that option. But Torvax controls too many votes. His allies would dismiss the evidence as fabrication. We would be accused of trying to destabilize the Council for our own purposes. And you would be correct, Thrall added. The Vorks have made enemies among the elder species. They would use this as an excuse to act against us. So what do you want me to do? Kasix and Thrall exchanged glances. Some unspoken communication passed between them. We want you to take this information to the humans, Kasix said. Yeveth stared at him. The humans are not responding to anyone. I have sent dozens of messages. They all go unanswered. Messages can be ignored, Thrall said. A personal visit cannot. You want me to go to Earth? Their borders are closed. Any ship that enters human space is turned away. Not turned away, Kasix corrected. Escorted out. The humans have not fired on anyone. They are not hostile. They are simply withdrawn. Thrall leaned forward. We believe they will speak to you. You were trained by Ambassador Vance. You have a personal connection. If anyone can reach them, it is you. Yeveth thought about the proposal. It was risky. If the humans refused to meet with her, she would have accomplished nothing. If Torvax discovered what she was doing, he would move against her coalition. But if she succeeded, she might change everything. Even if the humans agree to meet with me, what do you expect them to do? They left because they were tired of being used. This evidence will only confirm their decision. Perhaps, Kasix admitted. But they deserve to know the truth. They deserve to know that they were manipulated. What they do with that knowledge is their choice. Yeveth stood up and walked back to the window. The stars looked different now, colder, more distant. She thought about Helena Vance. She thought about the lessons she had learned. She thought about the galaxy she had sworn to serve. I will need a ship, she said. Something small and fast. I cannot take an official delegation. This must appear to be a personal journey. Thrall rose from his chair. The Vorks will provide a vessel. It will be unmarked and untraceable. Kasix's light brightened. The Mothrani will provide navigational data. We have mapped the safest routes to human space. Yeveth nodded slowly. I will need other representatives. This cannot be just a Tassari mission. If we want the humans to believe we speak for the galaxy, we need voices from multiple species. We anticipated that, Kasix said. We have contacted others who share our concerns. Representatives from the Mandari, the Orvani, the Kalani, and 3 other species have agreed to join you. They will meet you at the departure point. Yeveth turned to face her unexpected allies. You have been planning this for some time, since we discovered the truth, Thrall confirmed. We needed someone to lead the mission, someone the humans would recognize and trust. You were the obvious choice. It was strange, Yeveth thought. 6 months ago, these 2 species had been on the verge of war. Now they were working together to save the galaxy. Perhaps there was hope after all. When do I leave? She asked. Tomorrow, Kasix replied. Every day we delay, Torvax grows stronger. We cannot afford to wait. After her visitors left, Yeveth sat alone in the darkness of her quarters. She thought about what lay ahead. The journey to Earth would take 3 weeks. She would be traveling through unstable space, past war zones and pirate territories. She would be approaching a species that had deliberately cut itself off from the rest of the galaxy. She might fail. She probably would fail. The humans had every reason to reject her appeal, but she had to try. She opened her personal terminal and began composing a message. It was addressed to Ambassador Helena Vance, though she had no way of knowing if Helena would ever receive it. Ambassador Vance, I am coming to Earth. I bring news that you need to hear. The galaxy's crisis was not an accident. It was a trap, and we all fell into it. Please meet with me. The future of everything we both believe in depends on it. She sent the message into the void. Then she began to pack. The next morning, she boarded a small Vorx shuttle at a private docking bay on the far side of Station Meridian. 7 other delegates waited for her inside. They represented species that had suffered the most from the galactic chaos. They had all lost something in the past year. Friends, family, homes, hope. They were all that stood between the galaxy and Elder Torvax's plan. Yeveth took her seat as the shuttle engines powered up. The stars began to move outside the windows. Station Meridian shrank behind them, becoming just another point of light in the darkness. They set course for Earth. They set course for humanity. They set course for their last chance. The journey to Earth took 22 days. 22 days of traveling through space that had once been safe and prosperous. Now it was dangerous and unpredictable. Counselor Yeveth and her delegation witnessed the damage firsthand. They passed through the ruins of the Kathrani-Sorvali war zone, where the wreckage of destroyed ships floated among the debris of shattered colonies. They skirted the edge of Kreth Syndicate territory, where pirate vessels prowled for easy prey. They saw refugee convoys fleeing from worlds that could no longer protect them. The galaxy was bleeding, and no one was there to stop it. On the 22nd day, the Vorix shuttle crossed the boundary into human space. Yeveth tensed in her seat, expecting alarms, expecting weapons, expecting some kind of response. Nothing happened. The shuttle continued forward. The stars around them looked the same as any other region of space. There were no patrol vessels, no warning beacons, no signs that this territory belonged to anyone. "Strange," said Ambassador Darren of the Orvani Coalition. He was a slender being with blue-gray skin and large dark eyes. His people were known for their analytical minds. Human space should be heavily monitored. Where are their defense systems? Yeveth shook her head. "I do not know. Perhaps they are watching us in ways we cannot detect." They continued toward Earth. Hours passed. The sun grew brighter ahead of them. A yellow star that had given birth to the most unusual species in the galaxy. Then the humans appeared. They came from nowhere, or perhaps everywhere at once. One moment the shuttle was alone. The next moment it was surrounded by a dozen sleek vessels that moved with perfect coordination. They were not warships. They were civilian craft, painted in bright colors and covered with symbols that Yeveth did not recognize. A communication request appeared on the shuttle's display. Yeveth accepted it. A human face filled the screen. It was a young woman with brown skin and curly black hair. She wore simple clothing, no uniform, no insignia. Her expression was curious rather than threatening. "Hello there," the woman said. "You folks are a long way from home. Can I ask what brings you to Earth?" Yeveth stood up and faced the screen. "My name is Counselor Yeveth of the Tassari Confederation. I am accompanied by representatives from 7 other species. We have come to speak with Ambassador Helena Vance. It is a matter of great urgency." The woman's eyebrows rose. "Ambassador Vance? She retired about 8 months ago. But I suppose I can pass along a message. Please tell her that I am her former student. Please tell her that I bring evidence of a conspiracy against humanity. Please tell her that the galaxy needs her help." The woman studied Yeveth's face for a long moment. Then she smiled slightly. "That's quite a message. Hold position while I make some calls." The communication ended. The human vessels remained in formation round the shuttle. They did not point weapons or issue threats. They simply waited. Yeveth sat back down. Her hearts were beating rapidly. She had reached Earth. She had made contact. Now everything depended on whether Helena Vance would agree to meet with her. An hour passed, then another. The delegation grew restless. Some paced the small cabin. Others stared out the windows at the human vessels. Ambassador Darren ran calculations on his datapad, trying to analyze the technology that had allowed the humans to appear so suddenly. Finally, a new communication request arrived. Yeveth answered it immediately. Helena Vance's face appeared on the screen. She looked older than Yeveth remembered. The gray in her hair had spread. New lines marked her face, but her eyes were the same, sharp and wise and filled with a kindness that had never faded. "Yeveth," Helena said. Her voice was warm. "It has been a long time." Yeveth felt tears forming in her eyes. She blinked them away. "Ambassador Vance, thank you for speaking with me. I received your messages. All of them. I am sorry I did not respond. The decision to remain silent was difficult. I understand. I would not have come if the situation were not desperate." Helena nodded slowly. "The young woman who intercepted you is my niece. She says you have evidence of a conspiracy. I admit I am curious. It is more than a conspiracy. It is a complete explanation for everything that has happened. The chaos, the wars, the collapse of the Council. None of it was accidental. It was all planned by the elder species. They wanted humanity gone. They engineered Directive 1187 specifically to provoke your departure." Helena's expression did not change, but something shifted in her eyes. "I suspected as much. We all did. But suspicion is not proof. I have proof. Intercepted communications between Elder Torvax and the Rithini High Council. They outline the entire plan. They call it Project Dominion. Silence stretched between them. Helena seemed to be considering something very carefully. I will meet with you, she said finally. You may land your shuttle at the coordinates I am sending now. I will be waiting. The communication ended. New coordinates appeared on the shuttle's navigation display. They pointed to a location on Earth's surface, a small coastal city on one of the northern continents. The Vorix pilot adjusted their course. The shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere, breaking through clouds to reveal a world of blue oceans and green continents. It was beautiful in a way that few worlds were. Not the sterile beauty of carefully managed ecosystems, but the wild beauty of a planet that had evolved its own way. They landed on a small platform near the ocean. The air that entered the shuttle when the doors opened was warm and salty. Waves crashed against rocks nearby. Birds circled overhead, calling to each other in voices that sounded almost like laughter. Helena Vance waited at the edge of the platform. She wore simple clothing, a loose shirt and practical pants. No uniform, no insignia, just a retired diplomat enjoying her remaining years. Yeveth stepped off the shuttle and walked toward her former mentor. The other delegates followed at a respectful distance. When they were face to face, Yeveth did something she had not planned. She bowed deeply, in the traditional Tessari gesture of respect for an elder. Ambassador Vance, thank you for receiving us. Helena smiled and placed a hand on Yeveth's shoulder. You have come a long way. Let us sit and talk. I suspect you have much to tell me. They walked together to a small building overlooking the ocean. Inside, comfortable chairs surrounded a low table. Large windows let in the sunlight and the sound of the waves. It was peaceful in a way that Station Meridian had never been. The delegates ranged themselves around the table. Helena took a seat across from Yeveth and waited. Yeveth began her explanation. She told Helena everything. The intercepted transmission, Project Dominion, the elder species planned to use chaos as a tool for gaining power, the suffering that had resulted from their manipulation. When she finished, Helena was silent for a long time. She looked out the window at the ocean, her face unreadable. I am not surprised, she said finally. Torvax was always ambitious, and the Rithini have always resented humanity's influence. You knew? I suspected, but I could never prove it. And by the time the truth became clear, we had already made our decision. Helena turned back to face the delegation. The question now is what you want us to do with this information. Ambassador Darren spoke up. We want humanity to return to the Council. We want you to expose this conspiracy and help us rebuild what has been destroyed. Helena shook her head slowly. That is not possible. Yeveth felt her hope crumbling. Why not? You have the evidence now. You have proof that humanity was wronged. And what would returning accomplish? We would resume our old role. We would mediate disputes and broker treaties and slowly be taken for granted again. Eventually, another Torvax would arise. Another scheme would be hatched, and we would face the same choice all over again. Darren leaned forward. So you will do nothing? You will watch the galaxy burn? Helena's eyes hardened. We have been watching. Every message that was sent to Earth was read and analyzed. Every crisis was tracked. Every death was counted. We know exactly what has happened in our absence. Then how can you refuse to help? Helena stood up and walked to the window. She stared out at the ocean for a moment before speaking. I will tell you a secret, she said quietly. When we first left the Council, many humans wanted to return immediately. They argued that we had a responsibility to the galaxy. They said we could not let innocent people suffer because of our wounded pride. She turned back to face them. I was one of the loudest voices against returning. I argued that the galaxy needed to learn a hard lesson. I said that without us, they would be forced to develop their own diplomatic skills. I believed that the chaos would eventually lead to growth. Her voice grew heavy with guilt. I was wrong about how bad it would get. I underestimated how deep the wounds were. I underestimated how quickly things would fall apart. And I have spent every day since wondering if my pride has killed millions of people. Yeveth rose from her chair and approached Helena. Then come back. Help us fix what has been broken. Helena met her eyes. I cannot decide that alone. This is a choice for all of humanity. But I can tell you this. The evidence you have brought will change the conversation. It will silence those who argue that we deserve what we got. It will give weight to those who want to re-engage. She placed her hands on Yeveth's shoulders. You have done well, my student. You have given us a reason to hope. Now give me time to share this with my people. Yeveth nodded. How long? Helena smiled. Say the week of waiting was the longest of Yeveth's life. She spent her days walking along the human shores, watching the waves crash against the rocks. She spent her nights staring at the stars and wondering if she had done enough. On the 8th day, Helena Vance came to her quarters. The former ambassador looked different. There was a new energy in her movements, a new light in her eyes. She carried herself like someone who had found purpose again. The decision has been made, Helena said. Yeveth stood up, her heart's pounding. And Helena smiled. It was a real smile, the first Yeveth had seen from her since arriving on Earth. Humanity will return to the galactic stage, but not in the way you might expect. They walked together to a large meeting hall in the center of the coastal city. The other delegates were already gathered there. Screens displayed feeds from across human space, showing crowds of people watching and waiting. Helena took a position at the front of the room and addressed everyone. For the past week, humanity has debated our future. We have discussed the evidence that Counselor Yeveth brought us. We have argued about responsibility and justice and the price of isolation. We have disagreed loudly and passionately, as humans always do. She paused to let the tension build. In the end, we reached a consensus. We will not return to the Galactic Council. The delegates stirred with disappointment. Ambassador Darren opened his mouth to protest. Helena held up a hand. Let me finish. We will not return to the Council because the Council is broken beyond repair. It was designed to give power to elder species. It was structured to favor those who came first over those who came later. Even without Torvax's conspiracy, it would have eventually failed. She activated a holographic display. A new symbol appeared, a circle of stars surrounding an open hand. We propose something different, a new organization built on new principles. We call it the Stellar Assembly. Helena began explaining the structure. Equal voting rights for every member species, regardless of age or size. Mandatory mediation periods before any conflict could escalate to violence. Transparent proceedings with no secret votes. A rotating leadership that prevented any single species from dominating. It was the reform proposal that humanity had submitted to the Council 50 years ago. The proposal that had been ignored and forgotten. We are not asking anyone to join, Helena continued. We are simply building something new and inviting others to participate. Those who share our vision are welcome. Those who prefer the old ways can remain with the Council. Yeveth stepped forward. The Tessari will join, as will the Mithrani, said Elder Cassix through a communication link. And the Vorix, added Ambassador Threll from another feed. One by one, the delegates in the room pledged their species participation. The number grew quickly. 12 species, then 20, then 40. By the end of the hour, more than half the galaxy had committed to the new assembly. Helena watched the numbers climb with a mixture of satisfaction and humility. This is a beginning, she said, not an ending. We have much work ahead of us. Old wounds must be healed. Old grudges must be addressed. Wars must be stopped and refugees must be resettled. It will take years, perhaps decades, to undo the damage that has been done. She looked directly at Yeveth. But we will do it together. Humanity will not be the sole arbiters of peace. We will be partners in building it. Every species will share the responsibility. Every species will share the glory. After the ceremony, Yeveth found Helena standing alone on a balcony overlooking the ocean. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. You have given us hope, Yeveth said quietly. Helena shook her head. You gave us hope first. You came here when everyone said it was impossible. You believed in us when we had stopped believing in ourselves. This new beginning exists because of you. I only did what you taught me. Helena smiled. Then I taught you well. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sun sink below the horizon. What will happen to the old council? Yeveth asked. It will survive for a time. The elder species will not give up their power easily. Torvax will try to hold his coalition together. But the truth about Project Dominion is spreading. Every day, more species learn what was done to them. Every day, more of them walk away. And the wars? The Kethrani and Servali are still fighting. They have agreed to a ceasefire. Human negotiators are already working with both sides. It will not be easy, but the killing has stopped. That is something. Yeveth thought about the journey that had brought her here. The fear and desperation. The long nights wondering if she was making a mistake. The moment when she had almost given up. I was afraid I would fail, she admitted. I was afraid you would refuse to see me. I was afraid that even if you listened, you would not care. Helena placed a hand on her shoulder. Fear is natural. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to act despite it. You were very brave, Yeveth. Braver than you know. The last light of the sun faded from the sky. Stars began to appear, one by one, like distant promises. What happens now? Yeveth asked. Now we build. We create something better than what existed before. We learn from our mistakes and try not to repeat them. We take care of each other. Helena turned away from the view and walked back inside. But first, we rest. Tomorrow will be busy. The galaxy is not going to fix itself. Yeveth followed her, but paused at the door to look back at the stars one more time. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was changing. The old order was crumbling. The new order was rising. It would be messy and difficult and sometimes painful. But for the first time in over a year, Yeveth felt something she had almost forgotten: hope. 6 months later, the Stellar Assembly held its first official session. Delegates from 63 species gathered in a new hall on a neutral station. The walls were covered with symbols from every member world. The ceiling was transparent, showing the endless stars above. Humanity did not take the central position. Instead, the first session was presided over by a rotating council of 5 species, selected by random lottery. Helena Vance attended as a simple observer, sitting in the back with no special privileges. She watched as species that had been at war just months before sat down together and talked. She watched as old enemies found common ground. She watched as a new generation of diplomats took their first steps toward building lasting peace. Beside her sat Yeveth, now appointed as the Tassari ambassador to the assembly. Her green scales were bright with health and confidence. She had grown much in the past year. It is different, Yeveth whispered. Better, Helena nodded. It is just the beginning. There will be setbacks. There will be failures. Some species will leave in anger. Others will try to manipulate the system. Nothing is perfect, but it is possible. Yes, Helena smiled. It is possible, and that is enough. The session began. Species raised concerns and proposed solutions. Debates were passionate but respectful. Compromises were reached. Progress was made. It was not the old council. It was something new, something that belonged to everyone. When the session ended, the delegates filed out into the corridors of the station. They talked and laughed and made plans. They looked at each other not as rivals, but as neighbors. Helena and Yeveth walked together toward the observation deck. Will you stay? Yeveth asked. The assembly could use your experience. Helena shook her head. My time has passed. This is your era now. You and others like you. I will return to Earth and enjoy my retirement. Perhaps I will finally learn to paint, like I always planned. You will be missed. I will be remembered. That is enough. Helena stopped at a large window and looked out at the stars. Take care of this, Yeveth. It is fragile and precious. Protect it. I will. They embraced, mentor and student, friend and friend. Then Helena Vance walked away, toward the shuttle that would take her home. She did not look back. Yeveth watched her go, then turned to face the stars. Out there, trillions of beings were waking up to a new reality. A galaxy where peace was possible. A galaxy where cooperation was valued. A galaxy where every species had a voice. It had taken a year of chaos and suffering to reach this point. It had taken humanity's departure and return. It had taken courage and faith and the willingness to try something new. But they had made it. Yeveth took a deep breath and walked back toward the assembly hall. There was work to do. Always more work to do. But she was ready. The galaxy was ready. And the future, for the first time in a long time, looked bright.